and that all of that is going on at some subconscious level and being replayed for the conscious mind.
Well, I'd add to that, that's very good for the physiology, but I would add to that, it depends on which level of mind you're talking about. The conscious mind, reaction of the conscious mind is totally one thing. That's the serial processor. The reaction of the unconscious mind, the conscious mind is what you think and walk around conscious normally in this, and you say, well, I wonder what I ate for breakfast. That's all your conscious mind. Serial means like your regular computer over there. At the instant you're looking at the tip of your nose, at that precise instant you do not see or perceive anything else. But it's so fast, and you're doing the operation so fast, you think you see a screen. And it has a persistence, like a continuous recall for persistence, just like the screen on your computer. And so the conscious mind really is a serial processor. The unconscious is totally conscious, but it's massively parallel. It's got jillions of things in the slide projectors all at the same time. When your conscious mind tries to look at that, it just sees, 10,000 things at once, all slides in the slide projector, it sees black. So the unconscious, to communicate with the conscious, has to form symbology, scenarios, dreams. It's a master playwright. If the psychiatrist or a clinical psychologist knows enough about you and your background, he can interpret the meaning of the symbology, and sometimes you can yourself. It's not a fixed symbolically, it varies with the individual. Collective unconscious has a totally different kind of speed. A disembodied conscious or unconscious, what happens in disembodiment is basically, if you're still living and just out of body, that's one kind. You still retain a conscious. You can retain a conscious impression, but the speed's quite different than when it's in the body of the reaction. If you are dead and disembodied, what happens is the conscious mind withdraws back into the unconscious, and all that mess you put on in there in your life and repressed down in there, that's what you're looking at. It's like being in the worst nightmare or dream you ever had, and you can't wake up, and you can't get rid of it. So it depends on what level you're talking about of the speed of thought. But though thought exists, we just mean mind structuring and mind operations. That exists at all those levels, and each one is different. Certainly Tom gave you an extremely good rundown on the physiology of the mind connecting to the body to give you a response, whether it comes from the autonomic nervous system and so forth. In certain of the training systems, not just in martial arts, but in some martial arts, and I ran into it in Aikido, the training is devoted towards trying to achieve what's called a no-mind state. This means when your conscious mind quits interfering with the process and quits thinking, and leaves it to your unconscious, which is far more rapid, particularly in perception and forming the stuff, which then it normally presents to the conscious and say, hey, you got a problem, do something. If you use that directly, the speed is 10 to 15 times faster than the normal physiological process that Tom so adequately described. What happens then is you will have a sense quite often of the slowing down. Some of you have had the experiences probably in a near accident. This will sometimes trigger from the adrenaline pump. But all of a sudden everything is moving at a snail's pace. Well, in martial arts, if you actually achieve the no-mind state, first of all, you may be 15 feet outside your body as a point of consciousness watching it happen, and not in your body at all, and watching it very calmly, without thought, by the way, no thinking, just perception. And everything will be in absolute slow motion. A blow, a very fierce kick delivered at you, will move with just almost infinite slowness. You've got all the time in the world looking at it. The other thing is the opponents will, to you everything happens in slow motion. The opponents will not know what part of their body you touched or how they were thrown. And they will see you moving at blinding speed when you didn't see it that way at all. So it's a very curious state. I had experience with that several times, but I certainly never achieved that. At third Dan level, you have not achieved that state at all. But sometimes at the seventh Dan level, people do achieve that state, and they can do what we would normally call miraculous things. And their speed of thought has altered because they're using thought on a different level. The master of the school, I'll give you one example. There is a videotape taken of this fellow in his 70s against about a 4th or 5th degree black belt karate player, making a very speedy strike at him. And the old master does the formal bow in 9 frames of a 64 frame per second slow motion shot, does a full formal Japanese bow from the waist, goes down all the way to his hands and knees on the floor, makes a motion, and is coming up on the other side. From the first frame, the interval to the other frame was 8 frames, and that's 1/8 of a second. He did all of that in 1/8 of a second. But if you're standing on the side looking at it with your eyes, you just see a blur of movement. You don't really see what happened. Your mind won't register it that this individual moved like that. But he did, and he put it on film. And of course, some of the more advanced students can also do the same thing. So thoughts are a very funny thing. You've got to specify which thoughts you're talking about. It isn't just your conscious mind. If you think you're just your conscious mind, you're not. You're a lot bigger than that, and you got access to a lot more things than that. So thought and mind are very deep subjects, and the speed does vary depending on the level and the conditions that it operates in. In the totally disembodied state, it has no limit on the speed. In the embodied state, it's very slow, very, very slow. In a normal human being, where you try to involve your conscious mind, a quarter of a second is about the best you can do, even when you're fast. That's why you got to train until you condition it to where the unconscious takes over and does it. And it's called a reflex action, and it's called conditioned training in that case. And until you get that, no sports or no golfer or anybody else is really skilled until it has moved down to that level, past the conscious thing.